Hello, mamas, and welcome back to the B3 Mastermom. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to invest in yourself and your own development. We are on this journey of getting out of survival mode and going into thriving mode so that you can live an abundant life. Today's topic is the brain. So have your B3 journal ready now. So the agenda for today is to once again start with a question. Do I have baby brain? We are going to do an assessment of a baseline of your thoughts in the B3 balance wheel. And then we're going to take a journey into the mind. Scary, I know. But don't worry, because my brilliant mama friend and therapist is here to walk us through some really key points that can help us. First, she's going to talk to us about the chemical changes that are associated with baby brain. Then we're going to talk about the difference between negative talk, positive talk, true talk, just self-talk. What does that mean? And then she's going to end with how to keep our brains mentally stimulated and strong as new moms. We are also going to pause and shed some light on both postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, because postpartum is a season, it's a series of months, but there is sometimes a diagnosis that goes with it. Then we will end with some scripture and prayer, like always. So much good stuff. So if you need to pause and come back, no worries. This is your time. Use it how you need it. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's ask ourselves, do you have baby brain? In our first video, we discussed how since pregnancy, your brain is actually in a fog. And that's because you were growing a baby. And that fog is a chemical change that continues as you go through labor and delivery. Remember, your brain is now in the same developmental state that it was in when you were an adolescent, preschool, or even when you went through puberty. As it tries to redevelop and regenerate after everything that was lost through your labor and delivery. So I want to show you a photo. This photo, it's of scans of 3 moms who have postpartum depression. And those little brains underneath it are those very same moms when they were in preschool. Notice how similar they are. Think back to when you were going through puberty. What were some of the thoughts and insecurities that you had then? Do you see a parallel with what you're saying to yourself now? This is a chemical change, a chemical season. And it should only take about 2 weeks to work itself out. But as our OBGYN told us, it can take up to 2 years, just like it did when you were going through puberty. And needless to say, this chemical change, this thoughts and things that are happening in your mind, it doesn't end. You will go through it again with menopause. There are so many fun seasons as a woman. We got a lot to look forward to. But as we think about our thoughts and the chemistry happening, it influences our lives. And it influences our families and our children. Time magazine says that your DNA is not your destiny. Your DNA is not your destiny. I love this because there's actually science behind it. This is something called epigenetics. And basically what happens is that it shows that your disposition, your bad habits, your anxieties, your disgust or your obsession with pickles can actually impact your kids before they are born. So think about that. The baby that was just in your belly, their brain and your brain, that DNA, it is absolutely connected. Hence, baby brain. So with all of this in mind, let's ask ourselves, are we in a fog? Do we have control over our thoughts, or do our thoughts have control over us? As we look at the B3 balance wheel, plot where your brain is today on a scale of 1 to 5. So it's story time. Let's take a bit of a journey into the mind of a new mom. When I became a mom, that fog, it definitely lingered. I would take my keys and put them in the refrigerator. And then I would take the milk from the refrigerator and I would put it in the pantry. But it didn't stop there. 3 months after, when I was done with maternity leave, I went back to work, and the words that used to just roll off the tongue so smoothly at work, they weren't there anymore. I had such a hard time articulating what I needed to do and what I needed other people to do. Very simple things that came naturally to me before. Brain fog, for sure. Which is why I love how long maternity leaves are a common practice in other countries. And we're going to talk more about that in the business video later. But as we mentioned, I wasn't necessarily worried about the forgetfulness. I knew that with time, all of that good information about work and about where the keys actually go, it would come back to me. What I was worried about was the dark places of my mind, the negative talk, and sometimes even the positive talk that came from me and came from other people and other moms. I remember very vividly looking in the mirror and saying to my reflection, "You can't do this. Who do you think you are? You're not capable. You can't have it all. You are so selfish. You will never be happy or satisfied." Mama, have you ever said any of those things to yourself? Of course you have. You're a new mom. You're human. But negative thoughts are when you say yes to fear and you say no to a meaningful life. Those thoughts are not true. Let me say that again. Those thoughts are not true. Those thoughts are the devil trying to get to your mind through all of the fog and get deep rooted into your soul. What negative thoughts are taking up too much space in your brain today? If they're taking up any space, it's too much space. So what I want you to do right now is write them down in your journal on that piece of paper. Rebuke them, tear them up, throw them away, rip the journal. They can't take up any more space in your mind. The next step in my journey after I identified these negative thoughts was to go the complete opposite end of the spectrum with positive talk. And at first, this was great. I felt like Annie, the sun will come up tomorrow, or Kelly Clarkson, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like, forgive my voice, but insert whatever song you want, whatever chant, whatever mantra you want, except for the fact that it didn't help. I felt not strong. I felt sometimes like the sun wouldn't come up tomorrow. So then, when I looked in the mirror, in addition to the negative thoughts, I told myself, "You're a liar." And that wasn't true. I'm not a liar, but those positive thoughts weren't serving me. And it wasn't just me. Sometimes my mama friends who had the best of intentions, they would say cliche things like, "This too will pass," or "This is just a season," or "You'll get through it. It's going to be fine. You're a mama boss." And I know they didn't mean it, but what that felt like was blowing a whole lot of smoke up my you-know-what. Not helpful. Some of it was helpful. Something that I actually found very freeing was the phrase progress over perfection. I remember repeating that to myself every time there were too many dirty diapers, every time there were too many dirty dishes, every time I would forget something. I'm not expected to be perfect. That was the permission that I needed to give myself. So what about you? What positive affirmations are serving you? And which ones are just generic and blowing smoke up your butt? It's good to identify them and really savor the ones that are helpful. So the final step in my journey was going from negative self-talk to positive self-talk to biblical truths. And this is when the transformation happened. Every answer to life is laid out in the Bible. And so I went on a journey to learn, what does the Bible say is true about me? And here's what I learned. I am chosen. I am saved. I am complete. I am a new creation. I am light. I am a conqueror. I am called. I am created to do good work. I am victorious. I am healed. I am worth more than rubies. I am beloved. I am the daughter of the King. I could go on, and I did, just for you, in another video. I made you a biblical daily affirmation that I would love for you to put on repeat so that those pathways, those grooves, they can get so deep in your brain until you start believing what the Bible is saying is true about you as a wife, as a mother, as a human being. To retrain your DNA to believe the truth until you can embrace it. Now, does this mean that I never have a negative thought and that I never say things that are untrue? No, I am a human. I am imperfect, and so are you. Letting go of that perfection is the key. But now I know how to identify the devil's lies, and I know how to arm myself with the things that are true. And I hope you find this to be a gift to arm yourself as well. Now, this journey of my mind of negative to positive to true, this was my experience, but I've been doing a ton of research with other moms over the past 7 years and a lot lately, and I am confident that I am not alone in this mama mind of mine. So I wanted to bring in an expert who is a mom. She is a wife. She is a woman of God who tries to embrace those affirmations. She's a friend, and she is a mental health professional. This is my brilliant friend, Katie Damari. Katie has so many letters at the end of her name that I have to break them down for you because otherwise you won't appreciate them. Katie is a dual licensed, board certified mental health therapist. She has her Master's of Science from Marquis University in clinical mental health counseling. She also has a bachelor's in science of psychology and a minor in women's studies, which I know you know I love, from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is not just an academic, but she is a practicing practitioner of both individual and group therapy via telehealth, which I also love. And she has been helping people digitally since 2011. Katie specializes in helping people with anxiety, depression, relationship issues, addiction issues, and major life transformations. And that's where you come in because motherhood is a major life transformation. Katie is super passionate about helping others find meaning in their life, set achievable goals, and focus on self-care. She has this really unique approach because she combines a bunch of different methodologies to do what is best for her patients. She uses cognitive behavioral, she uses holistic mindfulness, she uses grounding and acceptanceness, as well as behavioral and psychodynamic counseling to help you grow your brain and your thoughts and your pathways. Katie enjoys spending time exploring Florida now that she's moved down here, the waterways here with her husband and her young son. They love to run, ride bikes, and swim. So let's listen to what Katie has for us today. Katie, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so excited to hear about your experience as a mental health professional, but also as a mom. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So we have Mom Captive. They are taking time out of their busy day. What are a few things that you want to talk to them about?
I would love to talk to them about baby brain, positive self-talk, mental stimulation, and postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression.
Okay, great. Yes, I'm so excited because we've been talking about this Master Mom and we're using the word postpartum as a season, right? A couple of months after the baby's born. But I do want to spend some time today talking about postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. So we'll get to that as well. All right, so we have a lot to cover. The first topic you mentioned was baby brain.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about it in the first video, and then we had an OBGYN talk to us about it. But I want to know from you as a mental health professional, is it real and how do you tell if you have it?
Well, to answer your first question, it definitely is real. It is a thing. And although it can be something that perhaps only lasts 2 weeks, it can be something that is significant in someone's life. It can come in many different forms. At times, people say that um, it comes in the form of forgetfulness and things like that. However, what it really is our brains changes and creating new neuronal pathways and new grooves and things like that as our bodies change. And obviously, we can see those major changes throughout pregnancy. Our brains do as well. Chemically, our brains do change.
And we
And
didn't get to see that, but it's
right.
happening.
And it's
Yeah.
so needed. It's actually a really good, healthy thing because our brains need to change in order to adjust and make the adjustments that is needed to become a mother.
Yeah. So when you think about the science behind it, because I was completely oblivious of this, I saw the physical changes, but I didn't think about the mental changes, the psychological changes. Tell us a little bit about maybe, I think it's neuroplasticity, or how do we rewire this chemical
Mm-hmm.
balance that's happening? What do we do about it, if anything?
What do we do about it? Ooh, that's a good one. Well, there are definitely new pathways that are being made, and it is a healthy thing. It's actually very much needed. And what we can do about it is really form a lot of really good connections with others and gain some support in that way. Obviously, talk about it and know that you're not alone. But what you can really do is there's an activity that I like to suggest called positive self talk that can be really, really helpful.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
so I know that that's the second thing on our agenda. I definitely want to get into positive self
Okay.
talk. But before we do, I would love to know from you, when we were prepping for this interview, you had talked to me a little bit about labor and delivery being a bit of a
Oh,
trauma
yes. Okay.
that your body and your brain has to prepare for.
Yeah.
So I never thought about pushing out a baby as trauma, but after doing it, it definitely was. So tell me a little bit more about that.
It definitely can be considered a trauma, absolutely. And I remember for the first time, me personally hearing that, and how the word trauma can be kind of a very significant, kind of scary word when really it's actually just a major life change that a lot of us go through. And when we think about having a child, it's such a major life change in so many different aspects of life. Um, Aspects like physically, mentally, emotionally, interpersonally with other family members and friends. We change in so many different roles and the things that we play. And so that is why it can be considered traumatic because it's such a major change in so many different aspects of life.
That's so funny to think about, because in the nesting phase, when you're pregnant, you're like prepping the room,
Yes.
and you're prepping your birthing plan, and you're prepping all of these things, but we're not prepping our brains, right? We're not prepping
Right.
for this trauma. We don't think to anyway, most of
Mm-hmm.
us. So I'm
And
just,
it happens naturally, chemically in our brains. It just happens. And that's what not only we need to be talking about and be aware of that it actually does happen, but that is a true fact that baby brain then is real because those connections are being made naturally already happening.
yes.
Yeah.
So moms, let's talk about it. Let's reflect on it. Open up your journals and ask yourself, did I view my labor and delivery as a trauma? Have I prepared my brain? Do I still feel like I'm in a fog? Go ahead and reflect in your journal now. Katie, you mentioned earlier that you have a tip, and it is the power of self talk. And so,
Yes.
what is that? Is that kumbaya? Is that just me, like, sitting and chanting? Or what exactly do you mean that's helpful?
It might sound a little silly, right? Especially the first time whenever I do suggest to some clients that they should participate in something called positive self-talk. It can sound a little, well, what does that mean? It can mean so many different things depending on what their preference is. It might actually be
Kumbaya.
right, saying things out loud to yourself, either in a mirror or not, by yourself or with groups of people and just
Yeah.
saying it out loud. Or it could be something as simple as grabbing some post-it notes and sticking it around the room or around your home where you can see it often. Some of my clients, even just because we're so attached to our phones these days, they'll have alarms on their phones go off And that way they can see their affirmations throughout the day, but depending on the timing of each alarm. So that can be really helpful. Some examples of affirmations would be anything that is positive for someone's life, whether or not it is something like, I am worthy, I am strong, I can handle this. Certain smaller sentences that are very positive in someone's life. And that can make a world of a difference for, again, creating those really important, needed neuronal pathways that is happening during the baby brain stage.
And there's, because you're using your phone or a post-it note or a song to do it, or music to do it,
Sure.
it's this idea of repetition. You don't just
Absolutely.
say it once and then it manifests and becomes true. It's
Yes.
repeating it, right? Yeah.
It
So
very much strengthens it.
affirmation, what does that mean? Like, am I just blowing smoke up my butt, or what does that actually mean? How do I find an affirmation that's meaningful to me?
Ooh, that's a really great question. And I do get that a lot. What can be really helpful and what we do sometimes together in the professional sense is that sometimes we actually take out a list of values and we kind of go down this. It can be a little daunting to see a very big list for one, but what's so great is to look at this list of core values that one may or may not say, yes, this is very important to me in my life, that I already think is very important. And then we go down and we see which ones are already addressed and already chosen in someone's life. And then it can be really simple to then come up with those affirmations based on already those core values that someone holds for their life.
That's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you have examples of a core value that is pretty common in some of the situations that you use professionally? I know everybody's so unique, but what are some examples of core values?
Some good examples: truthfulness, courage, hardworking,
Those are
things
great.
like that.
And so then you take that and you build a short statement that you repeatedly say to deepen the pathway and change your
Absolutely.
chemistry. Yeah.
And that is already linked to your core value.
Right.
So it is already truthful to who you are.
That's awesome. Because then your heart and your mind are working together,
Yes.
right? And then your body works as well. That's awesome. So as a mental health professional, do you sometimes find that you have to like give your patients permission to say good
All the
things
time.
about themselves?
All the time.
Tell me a little bit about
to
that.
myself at
Yeah,
times.
yeah.
So yes, as a mental health professional, but also as a mother, in this moment, I want to thank you for letting me be able to say that I give you permission to take care of yourself and to put yourself first at times, because if we don't fill our cup up, we can't pour out what is needed to others.
I hear your heart in that. And that's so hard because sometimes when you are in a dark place, you don't want to believe those things. Earlier, we talked about how the devil comes in and the neighbor comes in and the mother-in-law comes in, and those things just take up so much space. And that's what we believe. So if you're not giving yourself permission, you now have a mental health professional saying it is okay to say the things that are true, to say the positive things that are going to fill you up and serve you well and grow your thoughts and your brain. So think about those core values. What is true to you as a wife, as a mom, as a human being? Go ahead and put those core values in your journal now. Okay, so we've learned a bit about this science, this chemical balancing act that's happening in our brain to help us grow. And we've talked about how we actually have control over that balance with the use of positive affirmations and our truths and our core values. But how do we stay mentally stimulated so that we're not putting the keys in the refrigerator and things like that? Talk to us about mental stimulation.
Well, as we know, babies can be difficult and that can take a lot of work, and also taking care of families and the home and everything else. And so this is a different type of stimulation and activity. It's very much taking care of yourself in that way. And so mental stimulation can look like so many different activities that you may already be doing. Things And I know that most likely you would hear this from a therapist anyways, but one of the first things that I do suggest is possibly journaling. But if that's not your thing, it is okay. It's not everyone's thing. It can look like even some arts and crafts or painting, singing, listening to music, learning new lyrics, things like that, drawing. Some other ideas are games, apps that may be already on your phone. And another really big thing that a lot of people don't know that is actually mentally very much stimulating is talking with other adults that are very supportive in your life. People like family members, really good friends, your tribe, right?
Yes.
And that can be very mentally stimulating, especially if you are around a baby all day and you don't get a chance to talk to another adult all that much. So
Yeah,
that's
adult
important.
conversation. Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
I tried Sudoku. It didn't work. It was definitely challenging, but not
Yes.
necessarily mentally stimulating. You and I have an affinity for Disney karaoke, was
Yes.
it? Yeah.
So fun. So
Okay.
good.
So
Love
Disney
it.
trivia, Disney karaoke,
Hmm.
playing chess. I don't know, whatever it is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be fun. It doesn't need to be work.
Yeah.
And it should be something that's fun and interesting.
So you talked about apps, and this is a fine balance, because in every video that we've made, we've talked about the blessing and the dangers of technology and
Yes.
social media and things like that. So when you think about one of the apps that you've found value in, what is the type of app that you're talking about?
The one that I just came across again today, which I absolutely love, is called Christian Affirmations.
Okay.
And what's so great is that, right, you can record your voice saying these amazing positive affirmations. But what helps is continuing to play it over and over and then again strengthening those pathways. It's great.
So many good ideas there.
Yeah.
So whether it's Candy Crush or chess or daily affirmations that you read and say out loud and play repetitively, what are you doing to challenge your brain? Are you picking up the phone and having an adult conversation with something besides the baby's milestones? This is your opportunity to grow this muscle in your body and to grow your brain. So don't be afraid to do some things that might challenge you. And let's reflect now on what those mental stimulation activities might look like for you. So, Katie, this is so helpful, because I think out of all the things a new mom is facing, the brain is the one thing that gets forgotten the most.
It can.
So, if we are thinking about the science and the chemical balances, if we're thinking about our thoughts and we're trying to be mentally stimulating, at some point, there is a line in the sand where it's not just a fog, it's not just baby brain, but you probably have something that's clinically needing support, like
Yes.
depression or anxiety. So, how do I know the difference between baby brain and postpartum depression?
Ooh, that's a good question. The difference between baby brain and postpartum depression. Well, depression can be a little bit more severe. I know we kind of talked a little bit about how baby brain can kind of come into the ideas of a little bit of forgetfulness or trouble with different functions when it comes to step by step activities and things like that. But postpartum depression can really look a lot like hopelessness,
Mm.
self doubt, a lot of very negative thoughts, whether or not it's about yourself and your own abilities as a mother, but also um, as the unity of the family and things like that. A lot of thoughts of, am I good enough? I don't think I am. Um, it could even severely go into that of suicidal thoughts at times, or even
Harm.
homicidal thoughts. So if it's not addressed and not talked about, then sometimes it can go unnoticed. Another thing that we notice as well when it comes to postpartum depression is a lack of hygiene skills at times, just not taking care of yourself that way,
Hmm.
not eating well, not sleeping well, or perhaps sleeping too much, just staying in bed and not taking care of not only your baby's needs, but also your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because I know I've definitely had those helpless thoughts. And
Yes.
for me, it wasn't the 2-week mark where those helpless thoughts ended. I went back to work, maternity leave was over, the helpless
Mhm.
thoughts were still there.
Yeah.
And as Rachel told us a couple of weeks ago, it can happen for a year or two. And
Can.
so, at what point do you say, my hopelessness, I need to reach out for help? Like, when would you encourage somebody to
Totally.
reach out to you?
Everyone has different threshold, right? Everyone's different on how much they can handle. I wouldn't say ever go up to or try to test like what your limit is whatsoever. If you have a thought that is hopeless, I think it's important to talk about regardless of how severe it is. It's if it's something that you are noticing that is out of the ordinary, that doesn't feel right, it's important to talk about whether or not it's with your tribe, with your friends, with your family, or with professionals.
That's awesome. There's no harm in
Yeah,
it. Tell
not at
somebody
all.
else about
Mhm,
it, right?
mhm.
There's no harm in that. So, we have this fog and baby blues, and then we have these hopeless, depressed thoughts, but a lot of moms are super anxious.
Yes,
And so when we think about postpartum anxiety as a diagnosis, what does that look like? What does that sound like?
can be again very severe as well, or it could just be something very small. However, this was definitely something I had when right after I had my son, I realized I was worrying a lot of worry, a lot of worrisome thoughts when it comes to not only the safety of your child, but your own family safety, um, the safety, financial stability,
All the
the
things.
worry about even, oh no, what if when I go back to work my child doesn't remember me, a lot of like really intense worries and thoughts that can be very severe and perhaps just unrealistic, but can be really truth or feel as if they're really truthful in the moment.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
know we were joking about going up to the baby and like putting our finger under their nose
Yes,
to see
making
if
sure
they
they
were still
breathe
breathing.
24/7 and
Are
not
you
getting
still
enough
breathing?
sleep, and
Yeah.
yeah, all
But
the things.
I've talked to other moms who they're worried about like the fear of the unknown, and when the
Yes.
baby grows, or if the baby doesn't grow, or when the baby's in school, or when their
Hmm.
husband's at work. And so if those things continue to manifest, should they reach out to somebody like
Absolutely.
you as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Hmm.
this is so helpful. And so I do want to look into the camera and let you know that if your anxiety and your hopelessness is reoccurring and you just question, is this normal? Will you please reach out to your tribe, reach out to a mental health professional? There's even some online assessments for the Postpartum Society International, and they have amazing things like the telehealth that Katie does, where you can chat with somebody anonymously to get the support that you need. It is okay to reach out and ask questions. There is no harm in bringing somebody in to help you grow. So, Katie, this is so helpful as a mom, even you sharing some insight into anxieties and different things that you did. And as a professional, knowing the science behind all of this, I know it's going to bless so many moms. But I would love for you to maybe just look into the camera and give these mamas some encouragement as a mom and as a mental health professional now.
Give yourself grace, mamas. You need it. I need to tell myself this at times every day. So it's definitely not something that is just coming from a professional down. This is something from mom to mom that I'm just sharing with you. Give yourself some grace and just know that you are not alone. We are here with you, and your tribe is there with you. Reach out for help. Talk about it. If you're feeling a certain way, it is needed, and you are worth it.
Yes. Katie, I can tell you're passionate about this, and I am so glad that you shared your wisdom with us
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. The mind is truly a fascinating place, whether you're a mom or not. Wasn't Katie great? Okay, so now that you have all of this new information from her, what is just one thing that you can do today to transform your thoughts? Go ahead and plot it on the B times 3 balance wheel now. The Bible discusses this several times, and I wanted to share a few scriptures with you today. First and foremost, the Bible tells us to take our thoughts captive. Those negative thoughts about your body, your abilities or capabilities, your marriage, take them captive. But don't stop there. Those positive thoughts that aren't serving you, that are super generic and frankly not true, take those captive as well. When somebody else, like your mother in law or Karen across the street, blows smoke up your butt, take it captive. The Apostle Paul is very clear and authoritative about the captivity idea in a letter that he wrote to believers in the city of Corinth. In this letter, he reveals both triumphs and struggles that result when life in the present age, hello, meets up with the reality of God's kingdom. So we're going to go to 2 Corinthians 10:5. It says, "We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself against the knowledge of God. We take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ." So, what this means is the more you learn to trust God and the more powerful prayer you use, the better you can take your thoughts captive and make them obedient to the truth. This requires time, which I know is limited for you. This requires you to be still, which as a mom, you're going a million miles a minute. But when we can do this, we take time to understand God's will for our life. Then, once you have your thoughts captive, you might be asking, great, now I got them. What do I do with them? Well, we go from Paul to Peter. In 1 Peter, he tells us you transform these thoughts that you have captive. We're going to go to verse 3. He says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, perfect will." Did you catch that? The patterns of this world, those comments from Susie, those highlight reels on social media that society wants to place on motherhood, those judgmental stares from somebody in Target, the things that you say to yourself. Peter tells you, do not conform, but instead transform to what is good, what is pleasing, what is perfect. I don't know about you, but I want more good. I want more pleasing. I want more perfect thoughts. So, perfect thoughts, what exactly are they? Well, we are going to go back to Paul. Our final scripture comes to us from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. We are going back to where Paul is in the city of Philippi, and he's trying to start a church after Jesus died with a colony of retired Roman soldiers who are not believers. And he tells these soldiers a couple of things in verse 8. He says, "Whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about that." Imagine this, you're talking to a Roman soldier with all the ugliness of the world, all of the war, all of the death. He's telling them, focus on anything that is lovely in the midst of the darkness. So, Mama, I want to ask you to do the same thing. We're not going to focus on the dirty dishes in your sink. Those things are not going to take up space in your mind anymore. We are not going to focus on the dust that is on your skinny jeans hanging up in the back of your closet. Do not let that consume any space in your mind. That paranoia that you might be feeling of the fear of the unknown as your baby grows, it is stealing your ability to enjoy when your baby giggles, when your husband gives you a loving stare, or when there is a beautiful sunset right outside your front window. Think about what is already lovely in your day-to-day life, and then feel the peace of Jesus wash over you. I want to remind you that we have some daily affirmations that are biblically based to ground you in these truths until you can believe them. So I hope you will listen to them every morning to help you live an abundant life. ahead and take this time and take this stillness and take this space, which I know is so hard. But let's talk to God. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for a quiet space. Thank you that the Bible has every answer to every situation that we will go through as a mother, as a woman, as a wife, and as a human being. Help us to ground ourselves in that truth. Whatever is consuming our mind, let us identify it, let us take it captive, let us transform it into your truth over our life. Give us discernment, because it is so hard to tell what is negative, what is not serving us, and what is actually true and helpful. I pray a blessing of discernment and wisdom and strength over every mom that is watching this video. May you put a hedge of protection around her mind and her soul and her spirit and her body and her family. Let her be transformed in her mind, and let Jesus' peace wash right over her. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, Mama. So that mind of yours, it doesn't need to be a scary place. And if it is, you're not alone. We get it. And we hope that you will put the negative self-talk, the positive affirmations, and the biblical truths that you see day to day in the Facebook group. We are here to support you and to remind you what is true for your life and for the life of your family. Now, if it's more than just a fog, I do want you to reach out to the Postpartum Society International Hotline. Give them a quick text. It's not going to hurt anything if you are trying to decide if these thoughts are normal or if you need help, because this is a chemical change that sometimes requires some more support from professionals. Katie has given us 3 amazing telehealth options for you to use from the comfort of your own home. You are not alone. Let us grow and transform our minds together. Thank you so much for spending some time with us at B times 3. We'll see you on the next video.